Testing the audio on YouTube.
You ready? Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. I am Commissioner Neal, filling in for Chairperson Christensen and Chairperson Pro Tem Covarrubias. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Connolly. Commissioner Marlowe.
Present.
Commissioner Covarrubias. Commissioner Christensen. Commissioner Kogler.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Neal.
Here.
So the record will reflect that Christensen, Covarrubias, and Connolly are absent tonight, and it sounds like by consensus, Commissioner Neal will assume the chairmanship.
Well, I don't know if it's by consensus, but I volunteered first.
We'll show it that there was consensus.
Can we have applause?
Yes. Staff introductions, please.
Marcy Reynoso and Ashley Peterson, Administrative Assistants.
Warren Frace, Community Development Director, and Charlie Maloney, the City Building Official, is attending remotely.
Katie Bannister, Associate Planner.
Darren Nash.
Yep, Annie Branham from BBK Legal Counsel on the phone.
Okie doke. Now is the time for general public comments regarding matters not on the agenda. Would anybody here like to speak to matters not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the meeting. Any items proposed to be tabled or rescheduled?
There are none.
Okay, and with that, we'll open the public hearing. The first public hearing is a time extension for phase 2 of a mixed-use development project. Time extension of entitlements for phase 2 of a mixed-use development project. That includes 2 buildings. Phase 1 is a mixed-use building with 4,000 square feet of commercial space and 8 residential units currently under construction. Phase 2 of the subject of the hearing is a residential building with 18 one-bedroom units. Project also includes oak tree removal permit 19-26 to remove 1 oak tree investing tentative parcel map PR 19-007 to subdivide the property into 2 parcels, P19-0093, PD 19-07, AMD 21-01, vesting tentative parcel map PR 19-0070, OTR 19-26, and after that, vegetables or alphabet soup. Staff meeting, please.
Thank you, Mr. Neal, and I won't belabor the alphabet soup. So this is a time extension for a project that is currently under construction on the north end of Spring Street. The request is for a time extension for all of the entitlements, which include a tentative parcel map and then the development plan for the project. Here is the location. So this is to the east of Flampson Middle School. It's a building. If you live or work on the north end of the west side of town, you've noticed it's been under construction for some time, and so the projects are coming to expiration. So the applicant is requesting a time extension. This was the former location of the Moose Lodge before the current owner owned the property. So the project description, Mr. Neal also hit most of these points. So the phase one of the building under construction is a true mixed-use building, ground floor commercial uses with 8 apartment units above. And phase two would be another building, a separate building that has 18 units. There is an affordable housing density bonus associated with this project. There are 2 affordable units, which then entitled the applicant to different concessions, setback exceptions, and so forth that are incorporated in the development plan for the project. Here's a look at the site plan. Building A is the building that's currently under construction. Building B is at the rear of the building, shown there in blue. There is a tentative parcel map that would split the lot more or less in half, front and back. And so these are the entitlements that would be extended this evening. The project has a fairly long history. It was approved by the City Council back in 2020, right before COVID began, and the building permit was issued towards the end of 2020. The applicant did amend the development plan for Building B to make some tweaks to that second building, and then there's been some time extensions that have occurred as well. The DRC did review some additional changes to Building B, but they were not approved back in November of last year. One of the issues with the project is that the construction on Building A has come to a standstill for quite some time. The last positive city inspection that occurred showing progress on the building, Building A, was back in late 2022, about 19 months ago. So here's a look at Building A. On the right is where we were last year at this time when the Planning Commission considered another time extension. On the left, I went and took an image today. Obviously, the exterior wrap is flapping in the wind and so forth. But the site is secured. There is a fence around. There are windows in most of the openings and plywood over other openings that are not, that don't have windows yet. We do have members of city staff that go by at least once every 2 weeks. Both the city building official and the fire marshal make frequent trips to make sure that the building is secured. Some other images from today. So this is also from Spring Street, looking more to the southeast. Again, just looking at the condition. Here, now we're on 26th Street, looking to the southwest, so kind of the back of the building. Again, the Tyvek is deteriorating, but the building is secured at this point. The image on the right just shows the condition of the parking lot. The improvements to the parking lot have not begun at this time. And then in the foreground, you see the oak tree that is proposed to be retained on the site. The Planning Commission does have options. The first would be to approve the request for a 1-year time extension for the parcel map and the amended development plan. The Planning Commission could extend do a time extension for more or less time, or the Planning Commission could amend, modify, or reject the above noted options. Obviously, the city is frustrated with the lack of progress on the building. The applicant is here today, and we'll be able to hear from him on some positive changes to the status of the project that we'll hopefully be seeing in the not too distant future. And so that actually concludes staff's report.
Great. Anybody, commission members have questions for staff? Commissioner Kogler.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. The page 6, just out of curiosity, the bottom of the second paragraph there, it says the only potential code violations are those that pertain to the non-work over 180 80-day period of time. Is that a work violation in and of itself that nothing happens for 180 days?
That is correct. Both the building code and the fire code have requirements that progress continue, that, you don't leave projects sitting still for, the obvious reasons we can see in those pictures. The buildings become vulnerable, they become eyesores, they become a nuisance.
Okay, thank you. And just for clarification, the DRC did see some proposed changes to phase 2, but those are not the subject of this approval, I presume. This is to continue the existing plans in place?
That is correct. Yeah, the DRC was not open to continuing to amend the plan for Building B.
Okay, and then my last question is a general one. We've seen these before. What happens if the city says no?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
To the time extension, if the city were just to say no, what happens?
So the Planning Commission would have to make specific findings. I've actually got a slide that I didn't include because staff's recommendation is to approve the project. We don't want to put any more speed bumps in front of the applicant, but the required findings that could be made in order to deny a time extension, one would be that the failure of the Planning Commission to deny would place the residents of the subdivision or immediate community or both in a condition dangerous to the health or safety of both. And then if there was some reason that the denial was required in order to comply with state or federal law. So there are very specific findings that the Planning Commission would have to make if you wanted to deny the time extension. If the time extension were denied, the construction of Building 1 could continue, but the parcel map and the development plan for Phase 2 would be extinguished.
Okay. I just want to clarify, I'm not advocating that here. I was just curious in the general context of these extensions, what it would take and what happens if you said no. Thank you. That's all the questions.
Commissioner Davis?
Katie, could you refresh my memory? Was the removal of the oak tree already approved by the City Council pertinent to Phase 1?
Actually, no. So in the images that we saw, the oak that was in the foreground, that oak tree is actually going to be retained. It will stay on site.
Okay.
The oak tree that's proposed for removal is it would be the southeast corner of the existing, the old building. Yeah, let me bring up the site plan for you.
I realize the City Council will make the ultimate decision, but I was trying to figure out if we had heard this before.
Perhaps, so there's I've got to do it on here. So the oak tree is actually at the southeast corner of the property back here. So it would interfere with Phase 2, but sorry, new laser here. This tree that we saw in the picture is actually proposed to stay in place. Okay. So the tree that's back here, it's not easy to see from images. It's in poor condition. So the building has been designed to be placed over where that existing oak tree is, but it will be taken out.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't have any questions of staff, so with that, is the applicant here, and would they like to speak to this item?
Commissioner, sorry, we're here again. Didn't want to have to do this, but, Harry Hamilton, I'm the project applicant or one of the representatives of it. It was probably about a year ago we were doing this, and I was telling you the song and dances to all the construction woes we've been through. Fortunately, most of those are now behind us. My switchgear that was destined to be here last summer showed up in December, so that was quite nice. Then we were saddled with the fun part of the bank deciding that this didn't meet the terms of a construction loan anymore. So the bank had us pay off all of their money that we'd lent from them at that point, and then we basically sought new financing. So as Katie said, I found out last week we actually signed loan documents on a new construction loan for the balance of the project. And so we are in the process of firing this thing back up again and hopefully making due diligent progress in getting it done. So it has been quite a ride. I didn't think that COVID would have this much impact on construction, but it has, but now it's behind us and now we can move forward. So that's all I got. And I should say, I apologize for the position that this has put you and the city in, because it is an eyesore and it is something that we desperately want to just finish, not only for ourselves, because it would be nice to have a finished project, but just because it would be nice to clean up this part of town. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak on this item? Does the commission have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, Collins? Yes. Sorry, Marcy. Thank you. Thank you. Hello?
Caller, can you hear us?
Hello, this is Joel. Yes, I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Hi, this is Joel Peterson calling, Paso Robles, California. I live in the same area of town where this building is right now, 2548 Spring Street. Sounds like the applicant has some challenges getting this project done, but I just do want to note the fact that the challenge with this building, how terrible it looks, how it's been, 2.5, 3 years since the thing's been completed. It's not adding to anything good in the city right now with the siding coming off, the white Tyvek siding coming off. It's really bad. I would not ask for any extensions or anything to help this applicant other than to get it on and get it done right now. It's really not looking good in the city. It's making it look terrible. They've had years to complete it. I know there's been challenges with parts and with the electrical situation, but it's just not a good situation at all for our part of town. And I ask that the city and the planning commission implore this applicant to finish the project as soon as possible. It looks terrible in our city.
Thank you very much. Anyone else, Marcy? And with that, now I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for further questions or a motion.
I just have one question for the applicant.
Commissioner Marlowe.
You guys got your loans, you signed them. Do you have an anticipated start date? Have you created a new schedule for completing the project? Yeah, make you walk back up here. Sorry.
It was one of those that, so the question, did we set up a schedule? Not yet. It was one of those that we weren't entirely sure. We weren't 100% sure that this loan was going to go through. So it was one of those that up until the last few minutes, we weren't entirely sure what we were going to do. So we didn't put the effort into calling anybody and pre-scheduling them. I didn't want to waste anybody's time and say, hey, let's start next week. Let's start next week. So since that happened, we're now in the process of building that schedule. It's on my to-do list to finish up this week or next. So if you'd like, I can send it to you when it's finished. So.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then the contractor, the general contractor, I know contractors are incredibly busy. Obviously, just to throw another project right back on the plate, have you talked to them or whoever they are and had a conversation about that? And do they have a commitment to starting, once you guys, dot the T's and cross the I's? Have they given a commitment? Because it could be like, well, we're busy for the next 6 months or a year. And this leads into another one. If you have the funding and things are going to make progress, do we want to consider an additional time extension? I mean, maybe not. And just that's a question for other commissioners. So do you have a commitment from them to start?
The bank the bank asked how long, and we gave them a 10-month time frame. So the idea is to be completed in 10 months. Obviously, it's 10 months from the day we start. The commitment of starting time is a wee vague at the moment, but it looks like 2 to 3 weeks we'll actually have people back in there starting again. So.
And when you say 10 months, that's for the first building?
Correct. Yeah, the second building's still in plan check. It's still working its way through DRC. There's no plan to even start the rear building until the first one's done, complete, and leased out. So.
Okay.
Yep.
That helps. Thanks.
I'd like to follow up while you're up there. I don't like to get too much into analysis, but is this lending, is the idea that this new loan will help both these projects go forward, or is this just the finance?
It's just the first phase.
We anticipate the phase.
Not really at this point with the current lending environment that's there. There's a lot of cash into the project now at this point. So everything that's been done to date has now been paid for, including the dirt and the permit fees that have been paid for. So there's a large portion of cash into the project. So I don't anticipate it being a problem to then get the second building financed once the first one's least.
I just
so.
asked all this is nice, fixed life.
Yeah, I think with phase 2 at that point, it'll be one of those that, I mean, granted, unless we have another pandemic in the middle of it, I think the second one will follow a more standard conventional construction process. So we may, depending on, so the building that's there, the existing building that's there, it does not need to come down for the first phase. So it's one of those that we're not messing with anything that doesn't need to be messed with until we're ready to mess with it. So we've learned our lesson. Yep.
And anybody else? Is there a motion or further comment?
I guess just would be a thought for the commissioners. If this is for both phases and they're going to we're going to extend it for a year, and maybe it's not a bad idea, but we're going to extend it for a year, they're going to have to come back and get another extension for the second phase. And maybe that's a good time to check in, or maybe just food for thought, just considering doing an extension that would give them time through both phases of the project, but just something to think about.
So I believe this is just an extension for phase 2, not for phase 1.
Right, so
Okay.
phase 1 and the oak tree removal permit, they're vested with the beginning of construction on phase 1. So there was an amendment to the second phase, so that is, and the parcel map are what are being,
So it is
the extension there.
just the first phase.
Understood.
Or second phase.
Second phase.
Okay.
And the parcel map.
Thanks for the clarification.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we approve draft resolution to grant the time extension 24-04, a one-year time extension for vesting tentative parcel map PR 19-0070 and amendment 21-01 to development plan 19-07.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Kogler and a second by Marlowe. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Marlowe.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Chairperson Neal.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
And our next item this evening is a variance for development of a single-family residence. The residence is proposed with a 5-foot side setback where a 10-foot is required and a 10-foot wide driveway where 12 feet is required to limit grading and protect oak trees on the site. Variants are variance 23-01-/P23. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. So as you said, this is a variance that is associated with the construction of a single-family residence proposed at 2203 Vine Street. So here is a look at the location. This is obviously on the west side of town. The property actually has, traditionally would have had a frontage, would have be considered to have a frontage on Olive Street, but because of the topography of the area, it was developed so that access came off of the alley that is off of a kind of a little frontage road off of 22nd Street. There are, because of topography, this neighborhood's a little unusual. There's a lot of streets that don't actually go through. The west side is obviously a traditional grid, but because of topography, it's just an unusual neighborhood because of the lack of through streets through this area. So the red lines are just to show streets that don't go through in the immediate vicinity. So we're standing on Vine Street, we're looking up 22nd Street. So as you can see, the darker pavement going up the street is 22nd Street, and then there is a driveway off to the right side, and that is the frontage driveway that serves multiple residences. There's a couple that front on Vine Street, and then there is also several on Olive Street that take access from the alley that takes access from this driveway. The right-of-way for Vine Street is actually fairly wide, for 22nd Street is fairly wide. So the red lines show you approximately where the right-of-way, the extent of the right-of-way. So that driveway on the right side of 22nd Street is actually within the public right-of-way as well. So the project, there's an existing residence on the site shown in blue there. It's a small 1920 little bungalow, 861 square feet. The applicant would like to build, and here's the existing driveway. It was in that kind of purple brown color that is shown there. So that's the existing traveled way. It's kind of there's some, I think, deteriorated asphalt, but it kind of has the appearance of dirt. It's not a very well-established driveway. There are a lot of oak trees on this site, and that is really driving the site design in an attempt to protect those oak trees to the largest extent possible. So the applicant is proposing to build a larger residence at the rear of the lot, at the closer to Olive Street part of the lot, and convert the existing residence into an ADU, which our code does allow. So the yellow buildings, the new building would be the primary residence, and then the ADU there in blue. The proposed residence is about 2,500 square feet, and it would be a two-story building. The applicant will also be providing a new driveway. It's shown there in purple. The driveway will have a narrower width than is typically, it's less than the requirement, but again, that is in order to protect oak trees. So shown in yellow at the very top of the site plan that we see there is the existing location of buildings on the property to the north. The building in the orange color is the building that is requesting the variance. So typically that building would need to be set back 10 feet from that northern property line because it's a two-story building. And so the buildings shown in yellow are there for reference so that you can understand that this is not a two-story building being proposed right next to somebody else's building. This is pretty far from the neighbor's house. So this is a similar image, but so the variance includes a setback for the interior side setback. So that is that northern property line. And then the driveway width is also it's an exception, not truly a variance, but it's lumped in with the variance in the approving resolution. So the building would meet its street side setback. 10 feet is required there, and they are providing 17 feet. And the garage door would be 21 feet from the southern property line, that street side property line, and the requirement there would be 20 feet for a garage door. So they meet their garage door side setback. The variance would be needed on the northern property line. There, as you can see, it's proposed at 5 feet, where 10 feet would be required because it's a two-story building. In addition, the driveway is proposed at 10 feet of width, and that would be an exception to the required driveway. The city's fire marshal has reviewed and is comfortable with the narrower driveway. And as you can see, they're kind of threading the needle through the oak trees and trying to create as little disturbance to those trees as possible. So the two things that the two things that the Planning Commission is considering this evening are here in the red circles now, the 5-foot side setback and then that 10-foot width of driveway. So in order to approve a variance, there's some considerations for the Planning Commission. The purpose of a variance is to permit minor adjustments to development standards when there are special or extraordinary circumstances so that a property cannot be used to the extent that's intended by zoning. So in this case, it's the oak trees and the slope of the lot that are driving the need for this variance. And the applicant and his architect are here this evening and can further explain the great efforts that they've taken in order to avoid oak trees on the site. In order to approve a variance, the Planning Commission does need to make the applicant needs to make a showing that the application is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights of the petitioner. So certainly a single-family residence and an ADU are what we see frequently in the R1 district, so they're really not requesting anything that's out of bounds of what's typical for the neighborhood. In order to approve a variance, there are findings that the Planning Commission have to make, and we'll see these again as we get closer to the end of the presentation, but essentially you need to find that there's something special about this lot that does necessitate the variance, getting a variance from what is required. You can't be using a variance to grant a special favor on an individual property. So in addition, there's a driveway exception that is proposed. Driveway exceptions can actually be approved by the Development Review Committee, but we like to take projects in their whole onto the highest level of review. And so in this case, it would be up to the Planning Commission to decide whether or not to approve the driveway exception. And those can be approved when there are physical factors such as existing setbacks, lot dimensions, and oak trees that make developing the driveway infeasible. So here is a look at the site. So this is on Olive Street. We're looking north. 22nd Street is to the right, and that white building on the right there is the neighbor's house just to the north of the site. So there are a number of houses in the vicinity. So one of the things the Planning Commission needs to find is that this project is compatible with the neighborhood. So there are a number of projects that have two-story buildings that have less than a 10-foot setback. So this is this slide is going to show you some of those examples. So right there at 22nd and Vine Street, there are two houses, and I believe it's the house on the more westerly house. It has a less than a 10-foot setback for a two-story structure. Similarly, on Vine Street, there are two houses that are two-story structures, and they're both less than 10 feet from the property line. Up on Olive Street, these are two houses that are, if they're 10 feet apart, I would be surprised, and they are two-story structures. It's a little hard to see with the slope, but both buildings have two-story portions of the building. And then another example up further on Olive Street, shown in purple, is another house. The property line is actually to the left of that car. If you look at the property line in the site plan or on the map, and so again, a two-story building very close to the property line. So the point of this slide is that the applicant's proposal is in keeping with the character of this neighborhood. So oak trees. So the biggest justification for approving a variance on this site is the presence of the number of oak trees on the site. This code section does not directly apply to this situation because it is specifically about front setbacks, and we're looking at a site setback. But there is specific language in the zoning ordinance that allows a front setback to be reduced, and so I think that it's instructive of the types of measures that the zoning code wants the Planning Commission to take in order to protect oak trees. So a front setback can be reduced if the reduction is necessary to preserve oak trees and or minimize major grading, as long as the project maintains a 20-foot setback from the garage door, which this project does, and then that the reduced setback is not inconsistent with an established neighborhood pattern. Here's a couple of images of the oak trees. The image on the left is looking the street kind of up in the middle of the image is 22nd Street, and then there's a grade down to the driveway. You can see there's a number of oak trees there, and then on the right, you can see the trunks of some of the oak trees that are going to be between the ADU and the proposed residence. So DRC did review this project back in March, and the DRC did make a recommendation that the Planning Commission further review the architectural details of the front elevation, and we'll look at those in a slide coming up here. They wanted the Planning Commission to just fully analyze the site access and then oak tree preservation. So on the right, that image there is the existing house. As I said, just a simple little bungalow from the 1920s. So here are the elevations of the project. So this is the street side, 22nd Street elevation. This is really kind of the front of the house, the front door, the garage, and so forth. The ADU would be to the right of this, looking from 22nd Street, looking north. So north elevation, this is the side of the building that's closer to the property line than would typically be allowed. So this side will be 5 feet from the property to the north. And then these are the elevations. On the left is the west elevation, so that's what faces Olive Street. And staff had brought up this elevation for DRC's consideration, whether or not that was adequate detailing for a front elevation. Obviously, the project is not going to use this side as the front, but it does face Olive Street. So that was the question that DRC didn't necessarily answer, but wanted the Planning Commission to further look at. The east elevation is what will face the ADU. For perspective, the building will be sunk quite a bit below Olive Street. Olive is on the left side of the section that we're looking at here, the property line. Let's see if I can use that. Oh, wrong button. So here's the property line, and then you get the building. So the building is 15 feet, it's at its front setback, and then you get the building here. But anyways, but the point is Olive Street is all the way up above both first and second stories. So it's not going to be an extremely visible front of the building, but it is, there's not a whole lot of openings, and it's fairly unadorned. These are a quick look at the floor plans. On the left is the first floor. You see the garage, and then there are 3 bedrooms on the upper floor. So there are, unfortunately, the conditions of approval were not published in the agenda that you received, and so I passed those out before this meeting began. So the conditions of approval, the site-specific conditions of approval that are included in the packet that you were handed include a requirement that all exterior lighting will be shielded so that the light source is not visible from off-site. We're putting this, the applicant is requesting to put a building very close to the property line, so we want to make sure that there's not going to be light shining into the neighbor's property. All new utility service lines are to be placed underground, so that would just be the service lines and anything new. And then engineering has several conditions. Because the driveway will be placed in the public right-of-way, engineering will require an agreement to be signed by the applicant that acknowledges that their driveway is going into the right-of-way, and that it does not establish a property right, and that if the city ever needs that right-of-way for the expansion of 22nd Street, this driveway would have to be removed. Similarly, the applicant, at one point, there was an iteration of the site planning that include retaining walls in the right-of-way, and so condition number 9 would require that there be no retaining walls in the right-of-way. The retaining walls were included to try to reduce grading on the oak trees, but we really don't want to see that kind of improvement in the public right-of-way. So the really substantive conditions really are just these 4. They're not a huge list of conditions proposed. There are, of course, all the standard conditions that are included in the paper you received, but these are the site-specific conditions of approval that staff is recommending. There are quite a few findings for you to make. The first 4 are really the findings that have to be made to approve a variance. The first is that the strict application of the side setback for a 2-story residence deprives the property of privileges that are enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity. And really, in order to protect the oak trees, it is allowing them to build a house of reasonable size without having too much impact on those trees. Number 2 is that the variance does not constitute a grant of special privileges that is inconsistent with the limitations on other properties in the vicinity. A single-family residence and an ADU is very typical for the single-family zoning district. Number 3, that the granting of the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights of the owner. And I've included a quote there from the Oak Tree Preservation Ordinance that requires that every reasonable effort be made to avoid impacting oak trees, including but not limited to the use of custom building design and incurring extraordinary costs to save oak trees. So in lieu of huge expense, the applicant is just shifting the building over to stay further away from oak trees. Number 4 is that the project not be detrimental to the health, safety, and morals of the neighborhood and of the city in general. There's some additional findings that are included just related to the fact that the project will preserve oak trees and that the 20-foot setback is maintained for the garage door. The final finding there, number 8, is related to the driveway, and that is just you're finding that there are physical factors that make development of a standard driveway that meets all the requirements, that make it infeasible. And again, it's really about protecting the oak trees. The project is exempt from CEQA, from the California Environmental Quality Act, as a Class 5 categorical exemption for minor alterations and land use limitations. That does include things like side yard setbacks, and so that is a Section 15305 exemption. The Planning Commission does have options. The first, and what staff was recommending, is to approve the project, although we'd like for you to include the conditions of approval that were omitted from the resolution in your packet. So to approve the project with a reduced side setback and a reduced driveway width, and that would be by adopting the draft resolution with the conditions of approval added. You could certainly refer the project back to the DRC or to staff for additional analysis, or you could deny deny the project by making findings of denial. Staff is recommending you approve, as I said, but approve, but amend to include the conditions of approval. And I think that, yeah, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Any questions of the commission for staff? Commissioner Kobler.
Katie, the differential setback between the ground floor and the second floor, the 5 and 10, the new ordinance that we're talking about, does it address it just in that manner, or is it more lenient?
So staff is recommending that the side setback in the R1 district be reduced to 5 feet for both a single and a two-story building.
Yeah, that was my recollection. Thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
Katie, explain to me what happens if the driveway is in the public right-of-way and the city does need to widen the road. What does that do to this this housing unit in terms of access?
So staff at this point does not anticipate 22nd Street being expanded. The road does, the Olive Street does
It's
not go
wide
through.
already, it looks like it, yeah.
Sure, but if that were to happen, it would be up to the applicant to provide an alternative access, likely from Olive or 22nd, depending on how the grades would work. But they would have to provide a driveway coming from one of those alternate routes.
Is it even possible with the topography of this lot? I just don't want to put them in a situation if the city had to use the right-of-way.
It would certainly be an expense to the property owner, but we wouldn't want this house to prevent improvements that are needed for the whole neighborhood. The city is happy to allow the driveway to be in the right-of-way when we're not using it, but it is there for the good of the public. Dante Pecorino with in our engineering department is also here and can address it further if needed.
And I was just curious about the maintenance then is on the applicant.
That is correct.
Driveway. Yeah, no, that's all.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing, and if the applicant would like to speak on this item, please step up and state your name.
How do you do? My name is Stephen Sankey. I'm an architect from San Luis Obispo. So frankly, this is one of the most difficult sites that I've worked on simply because there's so many conflicting or contrasting conditions. The solution we came up with, I think, maximized, optimized what we could get from the site. I appreciate their concern about the driveway in the public right-of-way. Most driveways which go from a street to a property cross the public right-of-way. Ours tends to go up it. There would be no way we could get into it from either the Olive Street or the 22nd Street side. And unfortunately, this is a condition that was in place before many of the regulations and the rules that control developing now existed. This was a 1920 house, and so the oak trees become probably the significant controlling factor on the light. We've got a 30 diameter restricted zone. And also the city contracted arborists have both advised us that staying out of the 15 diameter zone is absolutely paramount, and that working within the 30 diameter zone affords us the ability to hand dig to get our utility lines through. The driveway itself is we were able to achieve without significant cut. Right there, there's a little bump about halfway up. That's really more of just a dirt berm thing that's ended up evolving in there than it is an actual outcropping that would need to be cut away. So we're going to be basically laying our driveway at existing grade, and we'll be using permeable surfaces, grass block. But that sort of broken up modular pavers that you can drive across. They support the bearing, and they allow the water to percolate through to get to the zones. So the placement of the house puts it outside of the root zones of the trees. It puts it on a reasonably level area. When I say that, we've got cut to the left. The driveway leads up into an area that's going to have some cut for the garage. Then our access from the two streets is restricted. The southern exposure is, the view of the valley and gets the full sun. The northern exposure is exposed to the wind and is in the shaded side. The neighbor's driveway goes up along that side. If they were to do any additional development on theirs, it would effectively meet the same criteria as where you'd want to develop along their north property line. Our owner has discussed this improvement with the owner of the adjacent property, and they've concurred that they're in acceptance or in agreement with letting it go ahead. The existing house is the historical element, regardless of whether it's registered or not. It was built in 1920s, and we're trying to recapture and reiterate the architectural style and sustain that for the neighborhood, the community there. There's really not too many choices you can have except do nothing. He couldn't put a garage on the property for his own use unless he were to gain access to the rear of the property because of these trees and where the existing house is. So I believe that it's the best choice, that it serves the property and meets the city's goal in helping him to enjoy his property. The future use of that whole area by the city would be difficult to imagine other than maybe running utility lines through it. It already has a sewer line that runs through it, which is significantly below the surface where we would be working. If they needed to go into that underground area, whether it be to add a water line or access the sewer, then it's the owner's responsibility with the grass block type materials. They'd be easy to lift up, relay. So kind of falls down to whether we do this or not. It's just, I don't see how he could use the site otherwise. But we certainly appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant? Would anybody else like to speak on this item? Marcy, anybody on the phone?
Caller, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Great. Thank you. I also live in the center of town as well on this project.
Excuse me,
I think
please
it's
state your
probably a
name.
good use of
Excuse me, please state your
this
name.
is Joel Peterson.
Oh, again, thank you.
This is Joel Peterson. 531 Bonita Avenue in Paso Robles, California. Again, this is probably a good use of this lot for the most part with the driveway and obviously the use of the oak trees. My thoughts are in terms of the west elevation, just having two tiny windows make it a bit of a challenge, especially the views from Olive Street looking south. Pretty monolithic. Might have to add an extra window or two on that. And then the windows facing north to the property line, just north of them, is pretty impressive. You probably have 8 or 9 windows looking north into that property, just north of them. So that's a lot, and I would just be cognizant of that, considering it's a 2-story building. I'm a little bit curious about the 2,500 square foot building going from 821 feet to 2,500 square feet. It's a pretty large house. It's increasing it threefold. So again, I get it. You got to increase your investment and your investment in the investment, but quite a bit of investment in terms of that. But I do like the 10-foot driveway, bifurcating the two existing oak trees. I guess my question is also where would the trash service be? Because obviously it's a pretty steep hill heading up there on 21st up to Olive Street. Where are you going to put out the trash cans on the weekdays of that? And is that safe? And can you put any more windows on the north facing elevation? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Marcy?
No, no callers.
Great, and with that, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, just quick comment.
Commissioner Marlowe?
I was looking on Google Earth off of Olive Street, or like the street view, and there's a lot of trees off Olive. So to address Mr. Peterson's call on the phone, you're probably not even going to be able to see the house with how much foliage is up there, and I'm assuming they're going to plan on keeping a lot of that foliage. I would recommend it. So besides that, I think they did a good job being creative with the property, and I think it satisfies what we're trying to do in Paso with keeping trees and allow people to optimize their property while still fitting the neighborhood. So I'd be totally in favor of it.
Commissioner Copeland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was on the site, the view from Olive surprised me because you can see the house pretty clearly. The provision that's in the draft resolution talks about working with staff to provide a small porch feature, additional windows, or some other visual interest. I don't know really what that means, but I guess I have enough faith in staff to say that if you could just embellish that face a bit, it would probably be beneficial to those properties above that do look down over this. But otherwise, I'm fine with this. Thank you.
And I was on DRC, and I think I'm the only person that is present at this meeting that was on DRC, and I believe the architect had some reasonable ideas for that west elevation. I think we were comfortable with the direction that he was suggesting may happen, adding windows or that porch feature of some to kind of break up that facade a bit more, because it is a relatively blank facade facing the front, which is the side. But we at the DRC essentially thought this was a fine project. Yeah, that's what I have. Anybody else? Commissioner Davis?
I think it is a challenging lot, as the applicant indicated. The topography, Katie. So I'm in support of this. I would like to see some embellishment of the west elevation. I noticed that. I heard Joel's comments. I did hear Katie's comment that you don't see very much of it because you're so much higher. But if there's anything to make that more interesting for the people who can't see, it would be nice to have that. But I'm in favor of the project in general.
And I trust staff will work with the architect and the applicant to make that west elevation a little more interesting.
I do want to point out that it does appear, I mentioned that idea of a condition, but I don't appear to have placed it in the conditions of approval. I have all kinds of mistakes with getting you the conditions of approval this evening. So if you want that to be a condition of approval, make sure to mention that in your motion. Thank you.
If I might make one short comment on that. Yes, when we did discuss this at the development meeting, the two considerations I had were garage window with that elevated grade to the outside would mean that on the blind side of the garage, there'd be a window about this high off the ground. And I was very concerned about security for that. The upstairs, there's 2 bedrooms for his daughters. And initially we considered windows in that. And then we considered the location of Olive Street and people just standing there and looking down through the windows. So, but what I did offer, which I in reflection should have done to begin with, but the drawings were already out the door, we would apply the lap siding and wood mats to the second floor of this elevation. That would be my initial interest or approach to it. If he chose to address windows, like I said, that would be a separate issue dealing with the fact that those 2 are bedrooms there and they're down. It's kind of a downhill view from Olive's.
Great. Thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to move to approve the variance to allow a 5-foot interior side setback where 10 feet is required by adopting draft resolution PC 24-XXS based on the findings and subject to conditions of approval.
Are we adding the additional condition for the applicant to work with staff on the west elevation?
If the rest of the commissioners would like to do that, I'd be happy to add that in there. Yeah,
I for one would like to see that.
okay, we can add that.
Is there a second, including the last addition? So we have a motion by Commissioner Marlowe and a second by Commissioner Davis. Any other comments or questions regarding this item? Hearing none, roll call, please. Vote, please.
Commissioner Marlowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Chairperson Neal?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
And then the next item on our agenda, this closes the public hearings, and now we go into discussion items. The consent calendar, March 12th, 2024 Planning Commission meetings, and March 26th, 2024 Planning Commission meetings. Any comments or edits? I think I suggested to Marcy that I was listed as chairperson on the March 12th meeting, and I was chairperson probably for about 10 minutes of that meeting. And then a couple of the motions included me as chairperson, so we can adjust that. That's the only comments I have. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
With those corrections, I make a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes for March 12th and 26th.
Is there a second?
A second.
We have a motion by Davis, a second by Marlowe. Any other comments or questions? And with that, roll call, please.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Marlowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Chairperson Neal?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
And other reports. Do we have any updates on the Paso Robles streetscape?
So the direction from the city council was to convene an open house session with the stakeholders and property owners. We're still working on getting that scheduled. We're hoping to do that early summer.
Great. HCOC zoning code update report.
So you'll recall that the Planning Commission looked at the zoning code, I believe, last month. We're getting those corrections and updates made. We expect it to be back on your agenda as hopefully a complete draft in May.
Very good. And then Development Review Committee rotation schedule. We're in the middle of the month, but it does change in May. Is there any conflicts or for May or June that anyone knows about? Since Marlo is the only one here for June. And hearing none, Planning Commissioner comments. Commissioner Marlo, do you have any comments this evening?
No comments.
Commissioner Davis?
No comments.
Commissioner Kogler?
No comments.
And I do not have any comments either. Staff comments.
Yeah, so we have a Cal Poly graduate class working right now on some design studies for the North Chandler Union Road area. That's the area where the future interchange at 46 is scheduled to be built. So we've got a class looking at some opportunities in terms of how you would tie together the new interchange with Barney Schwartz Park, Ardmore Road, and that part of the Chandler Ranch property. So they're working on that. We're going to be reviewing some of their concepts this week. They will be making a presentation to the council. We're going to be scheduling a special meeting toward the end of May for that. So just be aware if you hear any chatter or start to see any things, yes, we have a Cal Poly class looking at the North Chandler Ranch area. Other things going on, we are in the process of revising the environmental impact report for the landing project. That's a project at the boys' school. So the plan is to recirculate that EIR this summer and then get that ready for public hearings by the end of the year. And we had a couple big project applications submitted last week. There seems to be a lot of interest in large tourist resorts with conference centers in the community right now. So we actually have 3 projects now proposing large conference centers with big hotels combined with that. So we'll see exactly how that all plays out, but planning staff is going through the review process on those, and as those move forward, we'll keep you apprised, and you'll probably start to see some of that pop up on DRC in the future. And finally, the city's E12 special sales tax measure for road maintenance is scheduled to end next year. So right now, the city is reviewing options to extend that sales tax measure. That'll require a vote of the public in November. So right now, the city staff is doing kind of an informational outreach program to provide information to the public about the E12 sales tax measure and kind of the pros and cons of extending that sales tax measure. That was a half-cent measure approved in 2012. Generates about $5 million a year strictly for road maintenance within the city. They're going to be scheduled, I believe, on your May 14th meeting to make an informational presentation to the Planning Commission. This is the same presentation that they're making to interested community groups throughout the city. So you qualify as one of those groups, so you'll get a presentation as well. You're not going to be taking a position. It's really just an informational item. And that'll conclude my comments. Any other comments? I think that's staff's comments for tonight.
Great, thank you very much. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And how about second, and then just a yippee-yi-yay for calling it an evening? Thank you very much.